Yo, get the speaker box loud, hitting that stuff till you hearing that sound.
How's it going, everybody? Chris Samson here, also known as Pacific Northwest Samson. I dive around the cold waters here in British Columbia, Canada, and post my videos on YouTube. Today, I'm going to be reviewing the Insta360 X4 360-degree action camera. You might notice the sponsored content notification. Insta360 did hook up this camera for the review, but I can take this review in any direction I choose to. They are not telling me what to say. The feedback you're going to get from me is coming at you with 100% honesty. The Insta360 X4 is a phenomenal action camera, comes with amazing capabilities, but also some limitations that I'm going to go through in detail. For me, it's an amazing tool that I love having in my camera bag, so let's get into it. If you're anything like me, you hate learning curves, and that's probably the biggest reason I haven't purchased a 360-degree camera on my own, because I knew the learning curve would be a bit daunting. It does take a bit of time to practice how to film properly, and the editing process is a slight learning curve, but not nearly as difficult as I thought it was going to be, and I'm sure you can handle it if you can edit regular footage already. So here we have it, the Insta360 X4. In case you're unaware, you have a front camera and a rear camera. Both these cameras will film in 4K. 4K plus 4K makes this an 8K action camera. Once you film, the software stitches those two clips together from both cameras, making one 360-degree sphere that you can pan through in post and choose the frame that you want to upload to your content, whether that be social media, Instagram, YouTube, etc. The Insta360 X4 is advertised as an 8K camera, which it is technically, but it's 4K plus 4K, making it 8K. So you're not getting 8K resolution. At best case scenario, you're going to get 4K resolution. Once you start cropping into an image, that resolution is going to be reduced further. I upload my videos onto YouTube. Right now, YouTube doesn't allow anything greater than 4K resolution, so 4K is good enough for me. For that matter, I was filming in 2.7K for the longest time. Right now, my typical settings are 4K, but 2.7 is still solid, and 1080p is getting a bit dated now, but 1080p is still a really good quality footage. So 8K-ish, not true 8K, more 4K best case scenario, and then reduced depending on how much you crop. One thing that's cool about the X4 is you essentially have three cameras in one. You can shoot with the front-facing camera, the rear-facing camera, and you can shoot in 360-degree mode. For me, I kind of go back and forth throughout the dives. I went overboard with one of my videos shooting in 360 degrees. It's really, really cool footage. It's awesome, but people can get tired of it, and that was the feedback I was getting. So now when I go out and dive, I am primarily going to be using the front-facing camera, shooting in 4K 60 frames per second. But if I'm going through a really cool swim through under some kelp or maybe a shipwreck, then I'll switch it around to that 360-degree mode and save those really epic shots for 360. The single camera mode can give you a field of view as great as 170 degrees, which is crazy. It's really cool if you're diving on shipwrecks because you can see the whole entire wreck in frame. I haven't tried the front-facing view while spearfishing, but I have mounted the X4 onto my spear gun. I thought it was going to be quite cumbersome, but it actually cut through the water quite nicely, so I was surprised. And the wide field of view with the front-facing camera, I feel would be really, really nice. So I'm excited to try that when the spearfishing season opens. It just closed. I did try spearfishing with the 360-degree mode, and the footage looked pretty cool. It's quite unique. For shorts, for Instagram Reels, I think it's awesome. I don't know if I'm going to be filming in 360 mode full time when I have a spear gun in my hand, but it is some neat footage, and I'll definitely get a shot with that mode from time to time. The settings I've been using while filming in 360 are 8K 30 frames per second. I have heard online that in low light conditions, you're better off shooting in 5.7K. Shooting in a lower resolution is going to allow in more light, so your footage isn't going to be as grainy. The trade-off with 5.7 is the quality is reduced. And remember, that's 5.7 divided by 2 in between the front and the rear camera. And then once you're stitching things together and you're cropping in on the image, I find 5.7K just doesn't give me the quality that I'm looking for. So it is a bit of a sacrifice. Even in low light conditions, I choose to film in 8K knowing the footage might be a bit grainier, but at least I'm able to crop in without losing that quality. So that's what works for me, but again, you have to try that out for yourself. With this camera, you do have to be methodical, not overdoing it, but also save the 360 degree footage for really nice diving conditions. I've used the 360 mode in low light, diving under muck where it's almost pitch black, and it still looks awesome, don't get me wrong. But in RC, you need a torch. And when you're using a torch underwater and you're shining it at the housing, you're gonna have those lens flares that are noticeable, quite noticeable for that matter. Now, you can choose your frame. You can go around and select whatever frame you want, and often you can find some usable footage and eliminate those lens flares from being noticeable. Sometimes, not all the time. But again, it is one of those sacrifices. So here in the Pacific Northwest, we have a green sea. I'd say about 85% of the time, the conditions aren't ideal. We don't really have that option to bust our camera out every 15 dives out of 100. So here, use the front camera. If you do have the X4, don't be scared to use it. If you have another action camera, maybe utilize that on days where you know the visibility won't be as good. Or if you bring the X4, just, choose the proper conditions when you're filming in 360 degrees. Now, even though the Insta360 X4 is rated to 10 meters, you're gonna wanna use a dive housing, especially if filming in 360 degrees. If you're not filming in 360, just front-facing camera, not a big deal. But in order for the stitching to work properly, you do have to have the housing. Now, the housing itself is expensive, and the housing itself is extremely fragile. On my second dive, I had one of these on a selfie stick. I got out of the water and the attachment was a bit loose and it shifted forward and the dome went right into a rock and I put that gouge in there. That was a huge bummer. I felt my heart sink. And that's one of the trade-offs with this lens. You have to ensure it's clean, like extremely clean. You gotta watch out for bubbles. Sometimes you go underwater and bubbles will go over the lens. So when you're diving down, just make sure all those bubbles are removed. You see these anti-fog strips? I went on a dive once and it was a brand new anti-fog strip. Part of it must have flaked off and you could see these white little specks on the lens. And you could see it in the footage, which was a bummer, but I couldn't really take the camera out of the housing while it was in the water because that would defeat the purpose of having those anti-fog strips. It would get really, really cloudy. So when you do have the Insta360 in a housing, you gotta be extremely careful with it. The housing itself, don't let it bang against your weight belt, your BCD, your spear gun. And when you're hopping in and out of the ocean during treacherous shore dives, you have to guard this thing like your baby. I bought this aftermarket silicone housing protector. I'm going to be using that for sure every time I get into the water now. And that I can just tuck right under my wetsuit, so it's not going to be too cumbersome when I'm in the water. For $6, I would highly recommend buying one yourself. Even when you're getting out of the water, you don't want to put your housing on sand or any rocks or you're going to scratch it. So this is a really solid investment. If you're like me and you end up scratching your dive housing the first or second day you use it, they're expensive. You don't want to buy a new one, but at the same time, you want to ensure your footage is as crisp as possible. There are some aftermarket ones. I've heard some really mixed reviews about those aftermarket dive housings. If that's the option that you take, definitely do some research. It's not as simple as just a plastic dome. There is a lot of engineering and research that goes into the housing to ensure that the footage is going to be smooth when the software is stitching those two clips together. So read the reviews. I'm not saying don't buy an aftermarket one, but exercise your due diligence if that's the option you take, because they do come a little bit cheaper. Now, this isn't a tutorial video, it's a review video, but just a quick FYI, in order to put this in housing mode, you have to hold that button down and you'll see these like hexagons show up on the screen. Dive case enabled. So don't forget to do that or your footage won't look good. Also, a mistake I made, take off any lens protectors, any lens caps on there. Just make sure it's the raw lens when you throw it in that housing. Now, filming in 360 degrees does take a bit of practice. I would strongly advise you to learn on a dive spot that you've been to 15, 20 times. If you're going to say Port Hardy, Browning Pass, a really epic spot here in British Columbia, probably not the first place you want to bring your Insta360 X4 in case the footage you capture isn't what you were looking for. What I did when I first used my Insta360 X4 is I brought my Ace Pro along with me on a salmon dive. I got a bunch of footage with the X4, but I also filmed around with the Ace Pro And I'm happy I did because I made a couple mistakes. Again, didn't take the lens protectors off, and that affected the footage in the water. When you're diving, you want to be facing the light source, not necessarily backlit, or you can start seeing the seams of the dive housing. So that's something else I learned. So play around with the camera before you bring it to one of those once-in-a-lifetime diving opportunities. And also as a contingency, if you just have the Insta360 X4, don't be shy. Use the front-facing camera, get some footage with that, and then get some shots with the 360 as well. A lot of the complaints I see online when people aren't happy with the camera is just operator error more than anything. When I'm filming with a traditional action camera, I film in 4K 60 frames per second. When I'm filming with the front-facing camera on the X4, I'm filming in 4K 60 frames per second. When I'm shooting in 360, I film in 8K 30 frames per second. Currently, right now, it doesn't shoot in 8K 60 frames per second. I like to film in 60 frames per second so I can slow down the footage to smooth it out. But one thing I've noticed with the X4, due to the 360 degree capabilities, the footage you get off it is insanely smooth. I don't see any shaking whatsoever. So even though it can't film in 8K 60 frames per second, for me, it's not a huge issue. Lately, I've been posting a lot of my content on YouTube with 360 degree footage because I was trying to capture a bunch of footage for this review. Reading some of the comments, I've had some people love the footage. They think it's absolutely phenomenal and mind-blowing. And I've had some people tell me they've been motion sick from watching the 360 stuff when I was going overboard with it. I've had some people tell me they were dizzy. I never had that experience personally, but I've had that comment from about 5 or 6 different people. So just one more reason you don't want to go overboard with the footage. I've had a couple people tell me they absolutely hate the footage, and they're being 100% honest with me. They say it's really taken away from my videos. It's one of those things, you love it or you hate it. And that's, again, to reiterate, not trying to be redundant, but one more reason not to go overboard. With a standard traditional action camera, you can't go wrong. Everyone's going to enjoy that footage. It's always going to look good. With the Insta360 X4 360 footage, a lot of people are going to love it, but there's going to be some people that despise it. I was never a huge fan of 360 degree footage myself. The X4 has taken it to the next level though. It looks way, way better than any other 360 degree camera I've seen on the market. But I'm wondering if I like the footage a lot now because it's my own footage. Maybe I'm a little bit biased. I think it's awesome. I think it's so cool. When I'm editing the footage, going through it all, like scanning all the stuff in frame, it's mind-blowing technology. It really, really is. But again, it's my footage, so maybe I'm being biased. I think it's great tool to have. I think it's a wicked tool to have. And if you're uploading YouTube shorts and Instagram reels, I think it's the camera to have, like the best camera for sure. For long format videos, I'm still going to use it, especially for those fake drone shots. I got one when I was coming down here today to film this review, and I'm sure it's going to look wicked. I'll put it on the screen right now. How about that? I'm also going to be very methodical when I use it in the water. Doing swim throughs is like the best place you can use it. I brought the X4 with me to Bermuda, and I didn't use it. I wish I did, because there's so many crazy corals you can swim through there. I'm sure I would have got some wicked shots. I brought the X4 to the Nanaimo River, and I was swimming through these tunnels, and same thing, it looked crazy. I couldn't believe it when I was watching the footage. My heart was like going through my throat. So for shots like that, like you can't go wrong. You can't go wrong. So I've been filming my diving adventures since 2018-19, and I think my favorite clip that I've caught to date has been with the X4. I was diving down underneath the kelp bed, going down to the bottom, and I was grabbing onto a piece of kelp, looking at all the herring that were above me, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw something red, and it was a Puget Sound king crab. And I got that on camera, my reaction. I just see the surprise on my face, and I go and pick it up, and I bring it up to the surface. So that clip is like my all-time favorite. And something else that's really cool, when you're diving with the X4 in 360, and you go through all that footage, you'll start seeing stuff that you missed in the water. On that same dive, I noticed a few times there was a seal in the background. I had no idea it was there. There was actually one clip where I was diving, looking around, and there was a seal right behind a boulder, like checking me out, and I had no idea. So that's really neat that you can capture everything that's around you and you get to figure out and piece together what happened once you're out of the water. No other camera on the market, well, no other traditional action camera on the market has those capabilities. I call the X4 the camera of trade-offs. You know, you're filming in 8K but can't film in 60 frames per second. If you crop in a bunch, you're not going to have the distorted footage, but the quality is going to be reduced. If you film in 5.7K, you're going to get better low light capabilities, but then that footage is going to be reduced in quality as soon as you start cropping into it. So it's a huge balancing act is what it is. And again, you have to figure out what works for you, but also figure out what works for your audience. Get their feedback and base your filming techniques on their responses. At the end of the day, I make videos for me. I'm happy that people watch my videos, and I'm happy that they give me feedback and appreciate the stuff that I'm putting forward. But it's a hobby for me. So if I like the shot, I'm going to use it. At the end of the day, you want to make yourself happy first and foremost. Secondary, your audience. The X4 footage is extremely fun to edit. I'm like a kid in the candy shop. You can turn one clip into endless videos. You can upload in vertical, horizontal. You can select maybe a shot of what's in front of you, and then you can turn it around and you can select a shot of yourself and get that third person perspective because you're using the dive housing, the invisible dive housing with an invisible selfie stick. So it's really, really neat in that respect. Again, the camera of trade-offs, the one downside to that is I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I probably spend way too much time with one clip trying to get the perfect shot. I notice one thing that I might have missed, so I'm re-panning around. I go around again and I'm like, oh, I missed that, so I re-pan around again. So now my editing time when I'm using the 360 mode has been almost doubled. So that's one of those big trade-offs, and another reason I don't overdo the 360 degree footage, because I'm making YouTube videos. I don't want to spend weeks on end for one video, as where before I could pump one out in a couple days. I'm adding a few days onto my workload when I'm using the 360 stuff. I don't know if I'd call this a positive or negative, but sometimes the footage is too epic. You know, it's too awesome, and it's so hard not to include everything. So your video ends up being longer and you might lose your audience as a result of that. I didn't think having footage that was too epic would be a problem, but if you're like me and you're trying to get videos completed and not waste your life away in front of a computer, I guess that can be a negative. When you're filming with a traditional action camera, you have one shot to work with, so you don't really have the, I guess, luxury of panning around and choosing your shot. It's right there for you. So that's a positive. It's also a negative because when you have a single camera, quite often you're missing a lot of stuff. You miss some of that action. When you have a 360 degree camera, you're capturing it all, and it's hard to include it all. You get what I'm saying. You catch my drift. I'll call that a pro-con. The Insta360 Studio for your computer is pretty easy to navigate. I wasn't sure if my computer could handle 8K footage, and I'm happy to report, yes, it can. You also have the option to edit in proxy, so reduce the quality of the clip when you're editing it, but then you can still export in 8K. So for those that have slower computers, don't have the greatest capabilities, you should still be able to manage your footage efficiently and effectively. Now, once I'm done editing a clip, I will then export that clip into my regular editing software so I can complete a video. Now, that process alone does add time to export a video, depending on how long it is and the quality, which I film in 8K and high resolution, etc. 200 megabytes I upload it in bitrate. Depending on how long, it could take an extra couple hours just to export. And then I bring that video I edit in iMovie. I know it's primitive, but it works for me. And then I start going through my timeline. Sometimes my clips that I have from my X4 are a little bit shy to go with the music that I've selected. So then I'm kind of going back to the studio. I'm extending that clip by a few seconds and then bringing it back to my project, and that just adds to my timeline and workload. So I don't really know a way around that unless I was to get Adobe Premiere, which you can edit 360 degree footage in, and then it's all in one place. But for me, I like the simplicity of iMovie, so that's my process. I've played around with the Aquavision 2.0 that you can use for your underwater footage. I think the algorithm must be set for a blue ocean, as we're here behind me. This is the Pacific Northwest and we have a green sea. I don't find it does the greatest job for our waters. I do find just cranking the contrast a little bit does make the footage look nice and crisp, That's as far as I'd take it with any post-processing. Some feedback for the Insta Studio. Be careful when you're deleting footage from the studio, because I didn't realize it also deletes footage off your computer. So I lost that Puget Sound King crab clip. Thankfully, I already had it exported, but I won't be able to use that for any future angles, which is a drag. One bit of complaint I do have when I bring footage down to the timeline, I can't really read the clip numbers. So if I'm trying to figure out what specific clip was in the timeline, the lettering is really small and it's up against a white background. So I just have a bit of frustrations trying to figure out what clip I'm looking at. Overall, it's a pretty good program. You can adjust the contrast, all those different settings. And for you, the Aquavision 2.0 might work out a little bit better, so I'm not discouraging you from trying it. See if it works. For me, not so much, but not a big deal. I forgot to note, Insta360 also has an app for your smartphone, and you can just as easily upload footage from your smartphone device on a social media. I've never played around with the app. I do all my editing on a computer, but I've seen some tutorials on YouTube and it looks straightforward. So don't stress if you don't have a computer. If you have a smartphone, you're more than capable of getting your footage to Instagram or YouTube. As noted, I really like the wide field of view in the single camera mode, but I do prefer the footage I get off my Ace Pro over the X4. I find the Ace Pro has like really great color correction. The nanometer AI chip does an excellent job. I'm not saying the X4 doesn't, but I just don't find the sensor as large. So when I'm filming in the single camera mode, I do notice a bit grainier. For me, it's a struggle. Like, do I bring the Ace Pro along with me and have that footage that I prefer? Or do I bring the X4 along with me and have the capability of capturing 360-degree footage, plus having that water angle is awesome. So what I do is I decide beforehand what action camera I'm going to bring along, or oftentimes I have both cameras with me and I can jump back and forth. So honest answer to a question: if my camera bag was stolen today, what camera gear would I be replacing tomorrow? What would be the top priority? A, I would like to have a traditional action camera. The Ace Pro is phenomenal. I love that little camera. I'd probably upgrade and go for the Ace Pro 2. After that, I would want a long lens camera. I did a shore dive once and there were some killer whales, you know, a few feet off the shore, and I was using a GoPro I had at the time and it didn't do justice. They were really close, but they looked far away. After that, I ran to the store and grabbed a long lens camera, so that's a must. From there, I do have a drone that I don't fly. I would rather have the X4 and have those fake drone shots than have a drone with me, because they're cumbersome. It's one more thing I'd have to carry around with me going down to shore dives. And then just the process of flying them takes forever. And I'm usually too gung-ho and I want to jump in the water. I push my limits when I'm in the water. When I'm done, I'm cold and I want to get dry, so I'm not launching drones. Actually, I bought one 4 or 5 years ago and I've only flown it twice, and that was in Bermuda on holidays. So the X4 is perfect for those type of scenarios. Fake drone shots. I can fly it in the rain. I can launch it up super quickly, get a couple shots, and then pack it away in my bag, and it takes no time at all. So the X4 is probably third on my priority list, but it is a priority and it is something I would be replacing 100%. I know I'm beating a dead horse, but if you're uploading content directly to Instagram, YouTube Shorts, or you don't have the means to buy numerous cameras, I think the X4 does the first on the list. You got your action camera covered, and it also covers the drone. So maybe for you, that might be one of the top priorities. And the footage is still amazing that you get off that single camera mode. That wider angle is awesome, and you can't go wrong with it. And the footage that you're seeing in this video speaks volumes. It looks amazing. Now remember, this is not a tutorial video, it's a review video. But when I film in the water, I have tried a few different options. I film like this, and I found those lens flares that much more noticeable. For me, I film in this direction, directly in front of me. I find that works best. The lens flares are minimal, hardly noticeable, and it gets me the footage that I'm looking for. Now, before using the X4, I would highly recommend watching some tutorial videos. That's something I do not have on my channel right now, but I will leave a couple links in the comments. You can watch those. There's some solid ones out there that really help me learn as well. The wide field of view in single camera mode looks amazing on shipwrecks, or if you have a creature hanging out on a boulder. You can film that creature and then the boulder and everything else in the background. Looks really, really cool. What it's not good for though would be macro shots. So if you're trying to get really close to your subject, the X4 might not be the camera for those specific situations. The battery life on the X4 is very solid. I haven't had it die me yet. I was diving off the west coast of Vancouver Island in cold water, 9 degrees Celsius in the water for about 3 hours, and it lasted the whole entire time. When you are filming in 8K, you are burning your battery up quite a bit faster, and I was quite surprised that it lasted. When you are filming in 8K, the other trade-off there is you're capturing a lot of data. So you're gonna start filling up your SD cards quite quickly. If you're putting that footage on your computer, you're gonna fill up your computer very fast, or you're gonna start going through external hard drives like crazy. Just one more reason to be methodical when you're filming in 360 degrees, so you're not burning through your battery or your SD cards. The X4 has a lot of different attachments. This one right here I use quite often. This extends out, I think it's like 12 feet, give or take, and you can get some fake drone shots with it. Watch out around power lines, it says that on there. Kudos for putting safety as a priority, Insta360. Carbon fiber does attract electricity. But yeah, that's a attachment I probably would not go without. This right here is my go-to selfie stick for underwater footage. This one was made by Insta360. When you are filming in 360, make sure the camera is parallel with your selfie stick in order to get the invisible dive housing and invisible selfie stick effect. Where it stitches, it does have to be directly in line. Now, if you look at that attachment, that's the one that you want to use. I used this on one of the dives, and that there alone was enough to make the invisible selfie stick not work. And you could see that when I was in the water. So lesson learned, don't make my mistake. A lot of my friends, they dive with an action camera mask. I'm not really too sure what the footage would look like if you were filming in 360 with this mounted onto a mask. The problem with this on a mask, I can't confirm, but it isn't going to be very hydrodynamic. You're going to probably feel it when you're descending, and the movement of the water against the housing is most likely going to start pulling that mask away from your face. It's nice to have your hands free when you're looking for crabs or looking for treasures. There's probably a workaround, maybe a chest mount, but yeah, right on your mask directly might not be the best. There's a crazy amount of attachments for the X4. For me, the selfie stick is what I use primarily, but I did try the waist strap that was originally designed for motocross, but you can get a third-person perspective when you're swimming around. I tried that with my friend in Campbell River diving with a bunch of salmon. He had the little jet packs too, and we got some cool shots. One thing that's nice, if you're in the water and you have this on a housing, if I double click, now I'm filming in the front camera. And if I double click again, now I'm filming in 360 degree mode. So let's say I had this mounted on a spear gun. I'm filming what's in front of me. Oh, I see a fish and I want to use the camera as the selfie stick. I can just double click, and now I can start using this as a selfie stick. Of course, I would unload the gun at that point, but I don't actually have to remove this and switch the camera around and possibly miss what's in front of me, miss those action shots. So that's a really nice feature. If you ever were to, let's say, unfortunately smash one of these lenses, you still have a functional camera, so you kind of have that contingency if anything ever does happen. Just be careful with your gear, obviously. Something else I noticed with the housing, it seems to attract fish. I was diving a artificial reef in Howe Sound, and this lingcod came off this wreck and checked out the camera. I think it thought it was a fish, something to eat. And also there was a seal. I was diving off the west coast of the island, and a seal came up and was checking my housing out. It came right up to it and gave it a boop with its nose. It was extremely cute. I thought it was a toy. Seals are my favorite marine creature, one of them, so I was super hyped to have that footage. One thing that did kind of bug me about the housing is you can't check the battery life, so it's kind of a guessing game unless you physically remove it. But as you can tell right there where the dome seals around the camera is right where that battery indicator is. If you are using the dome, don't forget to wash it when you're finished. Salt water, even on the plastic, is going to eventually do some damage. Give it a solid rinse, make sure these buttons are all cleared out or they could start corroding away as well. If you use your camera out of the housing, make sure you're also giving your camera a solid wash. Water resistant or not, salt water is extremely hard on technology. I would always recommend using a housing in salt water because you're probably going to eventually damage your camera regardless of how diligent you are in washing it. Plus, having a housing is going to insulate your camera from the cold water. Maybe if you're in the tropics, that's not a big deal, but our water right now is probably like 8 degrees Celsius, so you're just going to have that much stronger of a battery when you're out there diving. I think that covers it. I think that covers just about everything I've learned up until this date and my truthful, honest feedback. I think it's an amazing camera. I love having it. I really appreciate it, Insta360, for hooking it up. It's a tool that I honestly will not go without. If I lost my camera bag, although the Ace Pro and long lens camera would be a priority, at my earliest convenience, I'd be grabbing myself another 360-degree camera. If you're uploading for YouTube Shorts, for Instagram Reels, I think this is the camera for you. If you really like that wider perspective, same idea, this is the camera for you. Just one final recap. I do call it the camera of trade-offs. You have the potential to get amazing footage, but you do also have the potential to screw that footage up if you're not careful and you're not methodical. Don't overdo it. Make sure that you're very, very strategic with where you bring that camera and the conditions you use it in. You can't go wrong for shorts, for Instagram, but if you're going overboard with your long format content, your viewers might get a bit tired of watching that footage all the time. And to be honest, they might get a bit dizzy as well. Filming in 8K, you can't film in 60 frames per second. Filming in 5.7K you can, but then you're cropping in your footage and reducing the quality, so that would be the trade-off. You got it, I've been rambling for way too long. It's an awesome camera. Pick it up if you don't have one. I fully 100% stand by it, and I think it's a wicked little tool that I have with me, and I'm gonna continue using it. Peace and love, everybody. If you have any questions, let me know. Don't forget to watch the tutorial video in the comments. I'll probably make my own one day. Peace, everybody.